And we are back on Betty's Bay, Penguin Beach this afternoon, and we have a beautiful sight in front of us. We are going to be focusing on these gems today, and remember that we are live, and I cannot believe or get over how beautiful these conditions are today. A stunning day in Betty's Bay at Stony Point Nature Reserve. And it's also quite a busy day with a lot of people touring and coming to see these gems in their tuxedos. And it's so lovely to be back this afternoon. So hello everyone. My name is Kersha, and behind the camera we have Igor. And we have a very special show today because we are celebrating women in South Africa. It is National Women's Day. And I thought we could maybe talk about some of the female birds that we have and see their role and what they do to look after their little ones. And, you know, they also can't do this without the males. So I must say, yes, it is Women's Day, but a day that we can also celebrate life together with these animals that we have here and how they all work together. The conditions are looking rather beautiful. This is actually my first day where I'm not holding the camera with Igor or holding my cap. It's just a lovely day without any wind, and temperature is also quite nice. You can actually see this little penguin that just walking onto the beach now was having a little bath, cooling down. We walked earlier on the boardwalk. We won't be on that side today because it's quite busy, but we are on the left wing, and we did see a lot of the penguins going in for a little swim, a quick dip to cool down, as it is a gorgeous day. So to our viewers, please remember to send in your questions. And in order to do that, you need to register at wildearth.tv/questions, or alternatively, you can scan the QR code. So please remember to do that. We would love to hear from you. If there's anyone who'd like to share stories and celebrate Women's Day today, any comments for us, please do send them in, and we would love to share with our viewers. So it is high tide at the moment, and the kelp, you can still see those fronds in the distance. Most of our rock pools are covered, not as exposed as before, as in when it's low tide, we're familiar with. And I think we should have a look at what's the weather like today. "17 degrees, that's a beautiful day, and I must agree with our weatherman. And the forecast for today, it is really lovely. For the first time, I don't have any sniffles or cold winds approaching. It's really nice. And I think today, we were just chatting earlier on, that it would be a lovely time to go out on a kayak and just explore what's happening on the shoreline here and see the activity with these animals. Igor was talking about going for a dive because the conditions look so cool, and the visibility was also quite nice. Betsy Boo, thank you for that comment. Yes, it's Tuxedo Tuesday with our African penguins, and they are showing off today, I must say, because their coats are looking rather beautiful and nice and clean after their little swims. So I was looking at them and admiring them as we were walking along earlier on the boardwalk. Very pretty. So you can see that they're preening and keeping those feathers in good condition.
Here on WildEarth, we love it when you interact with our guides while they are live. In order to do this, you must head over to wildearth.tv/questions and submit your questions, comments and suggestions. Simple as that. And to make it even simpler, from time to time you will see a QR code on your screen. Open your camera phone and scan this code and it will take you straight to where you need to be. We look forward to answering your questions on this channel.
Hi, I'm Cedric.
And I'm Ben.
And we are hosting an Ask Me Anything on World Lions Day.
Did you know that a lion's roar can be heard over 8 kilometers away?
Or that female lions prefer to mate with males that have the longest and darkest manes.
Have you ever wondered if lions are good swimmers?
Or why they have lighter fur just beneath their eyes.
Tag along on the 10th of August with all your questions to find out.
See you there.
So Egyptian geese, I would say this one is a female. It's on her own right now, but how we would tell this is a female is that because they usually have thinner necks and compared to the males, and if there were little chicks around with this goose, they would also be following her around. So in my opinion, I could be wrong, but I would say that this is a female. But I'm still trying to work out these birds and determine the gender of them. It's very difficult, and I've only been able to do that with when they're in their families, in their little groups. And now she's approaching. Some of the penguins on the beach. And you also have to look at the size. So now she's looking beautiful. It could be a male. I could be wrong in that. That neck is looking quite thick now at the moment, and looking quite confident on the shore. So if it makes almost like a hissing sound, then that can be an indication that it is a male in terms of their vocalizing methods. And the females usually have this honking sound, very loud sound when they're about to land or take off, or just have conversations with their mates as well, in communication with their chicks. So she's in charge, I'll say that much, with our female Egyptian geese. And I always like to say we had an interesting conversation with our Egyptian geese with another, I think a bachelor that was around. And he was interfering with the family, and you could see that the female was trying to keep the peace and trying to keep calm. Everyone was just chaotic on the beach, so they're very active when they're being territorial, and in other words, they're quite aggressive. And then the male just doesn't want to stop fighting. They just keep on going until they need to take a break. So I was quite proud of the mom trying to keep the peace there with the Egyptian geese. So yep, Alexandra, thank you for that question. Regarding the Egyptian geese, they have a variety of colors, and then the females always tend to be a little smaller, but their general coloration is that dull brown colors, but then depending if it's breeding or if it's a non-breeding animal, those colors could be a bit different. And with the males, they like to show off and try to attract a mate, so their feathers may be a bit more attractive compared to the females, and try to win them off in that way. But there are species of geese that are different. So the Egyptian geese, they've got this beautiful emerald color on their wings, and then on their chest, very dull brown colors with a patch just in front, and then a patch around their eyes as well, that I always like to call them almost like superheroes, with these bands over their eyes. Yeah, so that's with the Egyptian geese. So I'll say with the Egyptian geese, the females, the moms are very good at guiding the chicks, making sure that they get enough food, especially if they're foraging along the shoreline here. She'll teach them and show them how to find the little invertebrates that they would feed on, and beetles and bugs and things. And if they're on the beach here, they'll find beach hoppers and feed on that, little crustaceans, and focus on them if we find them. So Ego's just noticed something on the water, and we're not sure what it is yet, but we just want to focus and see if there's something in the distance here along the kelp line. So we see some cormorants in the distance there that are probably foraging as well, because they're diving now and again, and I can't work out which cormorant this could be. It's very far. I'm trying to see in the light. Let's see. Okay. It's very hard to tell. It could be a Cape cormorant or a bank cormorant. Wish I had some binoculars right now, but unfortunately we can't really focus from this distance. We try to zoom in, but on the rocks there we can see some white-chested cormorants. And cormorants are rather interesting animals when we have to work out if they're a male or a female, and then we're talking about colors and how to the variety of colors that these animals display. If from either being a non-breeding cormorant or a breeding cormorant, their plumage is very different, and I must admit that I'm still trying to identify and work out the differences between them. And regarding these birds, these white cormorants, they're much larger in size, and that's how I immediately noticed them, and they've got that white chest in front, breast in front, and they're not really showing off today. They're just hiding. I think my feed froze. I'm looking on the screen here. Suzanne, thank you so much for that question. Our cormorants, they're designed to actually dive and find their food. So depending on the species, it could be a Cape cormorant that they like to dive in deeper waters. So they're looking for mainly the type of food. Their diet would be anchovies and sardines, versus a bank cormorant would be more shallow reefs, and they would probably prefer on your kind of like your smaller fish, your reef fish, your streepies and those kinds, and also crustaceans that are found in that reach. So they like lobsters or that. So you have to look at the design of their beaks and what they would feed on in the diet. The same with the white-breasted cormorants. They also shallow reefs, not too deep, and they can dive and catch their food. So it's a beautiful thing to see these cormorants in the water. I've done a few dives where I've had quite a scare when I thought something was approaching me and it was just a cormorant coming to pop by and say hello. But that's just their feeding method and foraging.
We want to make it even easier for you to interact with our guides whilst watching WildEarth. When you see a QR code like this pop up on your screen, then open your phone camera, point it at the code, and you will be taken directly to our question page. Simple as that. Then you can let us know what you want to see, ask questions, and much more.
I've had it before where I've been walking and the waterbuck's jumped out of the grass. It's quite a frightening experience.
WildEarth. WildEarth Explorers is a club aimed at people who love nature and care about the earth we live on. First and foremost, if you join our club, you can watch WildEarth completely ad-free. In addition, we have great monthly prize draws, a weekly newsletter, and access to some great extra content such as fireside chats, AMAs, and hangouts. For a small monthly subscription, you can join other like-minded viewers and be part of the club. WildEarth Explorers, it's in your nature.
So there's some Cape Cormorants on Cormorant Cove. Eagle? Yep, so I'm just getting used to the names here. So they prefer that site over there. They're also breeding on those rocks, as in the nesting material. The nests are found there in between those spaces, while sheltered from the wind. And you can see they're colonial animals. They prefer to be in their groups. Also, being in a group protects them from predators. So if their chicks hatch and things like that, their predators could be another animal, could be a kelp gull that are quite sneaky, that would feed on those chicks. So they need to ensure that they protect the young. And in terms of the females and the males, well, generally with all of our cormorants, our females tend to build most of the nests, and they build their nests, and the material is supplied by the males, so they can't do it without the males. It's very an interesting relationship. You see, it's almost as if the males are going out, they're getting their nesting material, the food for the day, and they can work together to create that nest and to ensure their young survive when they hatch. So it's very difficult, as I've mentioned, to determine the gender of these animals. On our beach here in Betty's Bay, we have 4 species of cormorants. That would be the Cape Cormorant, Bank Cormorant, White-breasted Cormorant, and our Crown Cormorants. Okay, so those are the 4 that are commonly found on our coastline here. I haven't seen a Crown Cormorant yet, but hopefully one day we will see one. Thank you, Will, for that question. Our cormorants are generally found in their groups and their colonies on the rocks that you see there. Occasionally, you will find some cormorants that are swimming around, foraging on their own, but obviously to be well protected and to defend themselves from predators, it's best to be with their numbers. But they do have days where they're on their own, but it's usually at least you'll have 5 to 10 of them around of the same species, and they get along with their own kind, and it's quite interesting to see because these animals, they're very good at, that's where the thing about the colors, the bird colors, when males have different colors to sort of attract their females, the females need to be able to see this, so they can tell these colors in of their mates, and they're attracted to that. So that's one of the reasons why we have a variety of colors. But our coastal birds, they're not as colorful as our terrestrial birds that you'll find on land, and that's purely due to the type of environment that they're found in. So with our coastal birds, they tend to be very dull, gray, black, brown colors, sometimes yellow as well, and not too bright, so like a dull yellow color, and white as well. So that is usually an adaptation to be within this environment, the kelp forest, diving in the water to camouflage themselves. If they were a bright orange or bright yellow bird in this environment, they'll be easily spotted by predators in the water, so that's not a good combination to have. So having a beautiful yellow bird that you'll find in our fynbos regions here just on our coast, you'll find is adapted to that environment. Some birds have beautiful yellow, bright red colors, and that's also purely due to the type of diet that they have. So what they're eating is ensuring that their colors are, the type of proteins that they're eating can influence the colors that they have and that we see. So you'll find it's interesting with birds they've only really worked this out based on having birds in captivity, for example, like flamingos, and working out why the flamingos weren't as pink and those beautiful bright red colors that there are compared to the wild, and that's purely because their diet was different. So they had to adjust the diet to make sure that they're their natural beautiful color again and be able to release them. So Ego just captured a beautiful flight of one of the cormorants now, and in its mouth it had a bit of nesting material, and it's making its way back to the nest there at Cormorant Cove. So I'm assuming that would have been a male cormorant that collected that nesting material, took it back to the nest, and the female is ensuring that she has enough material there to ensure because I think breeding season has just finished now, so as in it's within breeding season with our cormorants. And also how we can tell if it's a male cormorant or a female cormorant, besides their colors, it's the most obvious way is their mating behavior. So they, when it mates, if it was a male, they would use their stance, and the way they would stand, they will stand upright, their tails will be erect, their neck would be upright looking into the sky, and then they will start to move their head up and down. And that for us, we'll immediately know, okay, that's a male trying to find its mate, and it's trying to impress a female within that space. So that's, with most of our cormorants, that's the type of behavior you're looking for, as it's quite difficult to identify if it's a male or a female. Thank you, Izzy, for that question. With our cormorants, our main 4 species that we have here, they're found here all year round. Just agreeing with Igor here, because I'd like to look that up a bit more detail. So with our cormorants, we've seen them all year. They prefer to be in this environment. They have breeding times and seasons. We have other birds that do come into our reach here in Betty's Bay that do migrate, and there could be types of species like the terns that are in and out within these reaches. So it really depends on the type of bird. With our cormorants though, I'm I will check up on that, but I'm pretty sure with our 4 species that they prefer this environment. They're very happy here, and they don't usually migrate. But they are found along our west coast. There are various colonies along our peninsula in Cape Town, in the Western Cape, and then moving all the way down south. It just depends on the type of species where they would prefer. So in that environment. With these guys, they're very much coastal, preferring to find rocky edges, sheltered from the wind like we see at Cormorant Cove, and that is their preferred habitat. You would find them sometimes also inland in some flays, not all the time, but they'll always be close to the shore where they can still forage and get their food, but as long as it's an environment where they can take shelter and to forage to get their food that they need. So when it comes to naming if it's a male or a female, or identifying if it's a male or a female penguin, it's very hard to tell because generally our males, they're much larger than the females, and also you would have to look at the bill of the animal. The build is generally much larger than the female bill. And their size is much larger than the female as well.
We are offering our explorers another extraordinary WildEarth experience. Explorers stand a chance to win a 3-night stay for 2 at Amakhala Game Reserve, picturesquely situated next to Addo Elephant Sanctuary Park. Enjoy an authentic bush lodge experience in the luxurious Woodbury tented camp and feel the heartbeat of Africa on exhilarating safari drives. Sign up to be an explorer today and you might soon be off to this untouched safari destination with WildEarth.
So being that it's National Women's Day, I'd also like to celebrate our women in science. And if there are any little WildEarth viewers who are female and little girls who are wondering what they'd want to do in their careers, I'd like to encourage you to think about science as a career. As it is, there are very few female scientists. The numbers are growing, but it is an environment that is dominated by males. But I want to celebrate that it's a really good space to work in, and there's a lot of work that we need, as in there's a lot of research that we need, and we need our little scientists out there to do this, because without our scientists, we won't be able to protect the animals that we have here in this environment. Betty's Bay is a marine protected area, in order to assess what's happening in this ecosystem, the health, the status of the fish, the plants, the penguins, our invertebrates. There's so much life here that we need to make sure that is protected. And this is why we need scientists to do the work and the research. So it could be a marine biologist, an oceanographer, a marine geologist, ichthyologist, study fish and sharks. It could be a ornithologist, birds. There's so many fields that you could work in, and I want to encourage all our female scientists to pursue a career in that. And don't be afraid of the environment, because it is seen as a dominated environment that might be a bit tough for females, but I think it should all be seen as an equal, and I celebrate the change that's been over the few years. There's a lot of scientists out there, female scientists have done incredible work. I can give you an example of Alison Towner, who is an incredible shark scientist working in Gansbaai, and she has recently revealed, well, over 5 years, she's worked on her thesis and her research, and has stated that our great white sharks have been preyed on by our killer whales, our orcas that are around here, and we needed to have proof about it. We had many theories for a few years, but she has now confirmed that that was the case, and there's some beautiful drone footage. Well, it's not beautiful, it's not a nice sight to see, but we have drone footage as well to see that these animals targeted the great whites, and that's also the reason why they've moved out of our waters, as in the numbers have declined over the years, and we couldn't work out what was the reason, and she had shared that information. So we celebrate her work, and I'm so grateful for Alison and her research team. Thank you, Alex, for that question. Do our females play an important role on the colony? I'd say yes, our females. With our penguins, I must say, in terms of the male and the female, the job is shared. Okay, so when they find a mate, they will create little baby penguins, they'll lay their eggs, and then those will hatch. The job between the two parents, that is shared, so they have to go out, they have to forage, they have to find food for their chicks, bring that back, and to regurgitate the food and give that to the little ones. So they'll have turns when they do that. It's not always the female, it really depends. And then what's lovely is that these two penguins will be good mates for each other for quite some time. There has been cases if the male is, or there's some problems with the male or female and they're not happy, they can choose to find another mate. It really depends on the animal and their relationship, but most of them tend to be together for a very, very long time. Okay, so they do a very good job in protecting their young for the first month and ensuring that they feed all the time. So to our viewers, I just want to remind you that tomorrow is World Lion Day, and a very, very special day where we will have an AMA, Ask Me Anything Day, time for our viewers, and we would encourage you to please sign up to be an explorer and to join us. So you can scan the QR code and that'll take you straight to where you need to sign up. And it's so important to have these conversations because our lions are pressured by poaching, the loss of habitat to human expansion, and a whole range of challenges that I feel is very important for us to be aware of. And we will have Ben and Cedric who will be doing Ask Me Anything on lions tomorrow evening. So please remember to sign up and register for that. I'm quite excited for that. And I think tomorrow Ego and I will be on the show, and we will also be celebrating Lion Day, and we're gonna have to try and make it a bit entertaining because we are very limited to some lions in Betty's Bay. So we'll have to see how we're gonna work this out. Thank you, Inga, for that question. So with our penguins, they're very specially designed, so they won't be drinking any of the fresh water that we would usually find in the streams and the rivers, so they're in the marine environment. And how they cope with that is that they take in the water either from their food that they're eating, and as well as when they're feeding, they're taking in a gulp of seawater. And they've got a very, very special gland that you find just at the nasal area of that animal, above there where their eyes, and just that spot, and that is used to excrete all of the excess salt that it'll pick up from the seawater, and it can reverse that into keep fresh water, and they can drink that water in, so they actually are getting enough water that they need to survive. Okay, so a very important gland that's helping them to do that. It's always interesting. This penguin could have just walked around, but he's just going to dominate. I mean, they're all relaxing, and Sishlev, our director, has just mentioned that she wished she was relaxing with these penguins at the moment. But when this penguin just walks in and waddles in and just wants to let everyone know that he or she has just come back from wherever, a little dip maybe, and it needs to tell everyone that it was a lovely swim, and they all need to do that now. So it's probably just joining the party now and sharing some words there. You see the walk of these penguins, they're designed to swim. They're very good at swimming, okay, very fast swimmers, and when they catch their food, they're even better at it. But when they approach land and they make their way onto the shoreline, it's quite interesting to see them waddle onto the shore and move around. You'll see that they'll start to sway right and left. They're waddling, and that design is actually for them to use the least amount of energy to get onto that shore and reserve their energy. So you can see they have very short limbs. So they always look very clumsy when they're walking around or waddling around. And what's also beautiful, that this unique is to find penguins with that little band. There's a second band just above, well, under its neck, so he's just showing off right now. And that's also to help us to identify some of these penguins, because the only way is to really look at their spots, because they've got a very unique spot on their body, and some of them may have a second band just above, or on their neckline over there.
So I started watching WildEarth at the beginning of COVID, and I haven't looked back since. I've seen all of the leopards I wanted to see, and Mariev's. He's been so playful and such a character. I had to remind myself to breathe at some points. To see those two cubs made me very emotional. It's just been brilliant. It's just blown me away.
So with penguins communicating to their mates, to their chicks, it's quite interesting that they have a variety of calls. So I had a question the other day, I think it was on Monday, that's the last time I was here, and we were wanting to know, do penguins have emotions? Do they have these emotions or feelings of being angry or hungry, or, you know, trying to work, as humans do. We have various feelings and we can share that by communicating and talking about it. So with our penguins, they pretty much do the same thing. They've got their own calls when they're communicating and talking. So there could be a call for, let's say, our chicks. There's two types of calls for chicks. Some of them like to call in a way where they're in the nest and they're just begging. They're begging for food. So it's almost like a begging peep, and the chick's telling the mom or dad that it needs some food, and that's one of the chirps that they do. The other one could be a sort of a begging moan when they're out of the nest, but they still need the mom or dad's sort of attention and needs to feed them. But now the moms and dads are trying to encourage them to leave and to grow on their own, but they're still there, but there's just like a begging moan. So it's a very different sort of call. So that's with our little chicks. Sometimes you'll find our penguins, when it's mating time, they may have almost like this very happy, ecstatic call where they'll be singing in tune with each other and communicating. There's almost like a braying sound. That's why our penguins are known as jackass penguins, the previous name, and now they're known as the African black-footed penguins. But that braying sound sounds just like a donkey, and it's always a lovely thing to hear when you come to Betty's Bay or visit any of the colonies. That's one of their communication calls that they have. Sometimes the mates also communicate with each other. They'll sort of do that same braying sound, and they'll have this mutual sort of singing that they have. It's really lovely to hear, because you'll immediately know the difference between calling a mate versus I'm happy and I'm content with my mate that I have now. So it's like happy calls. They do get angry at times. When they're fighting especially, they'll just sort of honk at each other and quite aggressive.
Very interesting in this lesson.
And then the last sort of call that they have, which I often hear when you're on a kayak in the distance, so you'll hear penguins calling each other. So when they're out in the water, they like to forage together. They form their little rafts, and being in numbers, as I've mentioned earlier, it's a form of protection. It's higher survival rate. And sometimes just to find each other, if it's quite cloudy or the swells are high, you can hear a call of a penguin and trying to connect with each other, and eventually you'll find about 20 to 30 penguins all together in their numbers, forming a little raft, because they're out, and that's usually our young juveniles that are out at sea after they fledge, and they will return after about a year to molt to the same beach of where they're from. Okay, so that's with our penguins. So they're quite interesting animals, and I always say that penguin behavior is very similar to humans. They can still display these emotions. Okay. So to our viewers, please, if you have any questions or comments for us, do remember to register at wildearth.tv/questions, or alternatively, the quick way is to scan that QR code. If there's anything you'd like to share about our female scientists, about our penguins here being quite, content and happy on this beach, if you have any comments for us, please just share them with us. We'd love to hear from you. The environment, the ocean especially, it's quite interesting with the fish. It's very hard to tell the difference between a male and a female fish. Same with our birds. and you would have to look internally to work out if it's a male or a female fish, and to work out if it has the ovaries to indicate it's a female or not. And so that's an interesting thing. Even sometimes it's visible. It depends on the species and it depends on the environment. If it's a freshwater fish, they will display interesting shapes on their head. But with our fish here, it's usually just dull grey colors in Cape Town. Thank you, Hannah, for that question. Our birds are quite territorial. Even our penguins, when they're in their nest, the penguins know that this is their space, not to mess around with each other. They'll almost sort of eye you down. They'll look you in the eye if you're approaching in the nest. If you're a predator or human approaching, they're very territorial and protective of their space. And that same applies to any other penguins moving along. I don't really like to see that. Even the adults would, you'll find chicks and the young juveniles moving around, and the adults are not very nice. They'll just peck them and tell them, nope, this is not your space. You belong on the other nest, so stay on that side. And they're very bossy in their own way. And the same applies to our birds. One of, a kelp gull. We didn't talk about kelp gulls today. So kelp gull, a very territorial bird, especially when it's breeding time, it's nesting time. They're very on the alert. If there's chicks in the nest, they become quite aggressive, and no one should arrive. So we had some time working on Robben Island where there were lots of kelp gull nests, and those birds are quite nasty, as in you would need helmets to protect yourself if you're approaching any of the nests, because they would actually strike at you as in a human, and to protect their space and their area. And the same applies to any other birds moving around. So what they found is on Robben Island that you'll find colonies of kelp gulls, colonies of the cormorants, and the cormorants started taking over the kelp gulls started taking over the cormorants. So that's not ideal, because then they were actually killing these birds. So they become very territorial. The kelp gull dominates in our waters here, as in it steals from anyone. It can steal from a human. If you're eating your little hot dog or something, or roll or something, or chips, they'll just see food and they will fly straight into your hand and take it. And the same applies to any of the other birds here. The birds are foraging, they get a nice catch. Could be a fish. You have to, as a cormorant, for example, you catch a fish, you need to swallow that quickly, because these kelp gulls are on the watch. They're not foraging and hunting on their own, and they're keeping an eye on who has food for them, easy meal, and they will steal that from you. Okay, so that's one of the behaviors of the kelp gull, and you may have heard of the term mine, 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 and that's exactly how these birds are. It's all theirs. All the food in the world is the kelp gulls. So they're very territorial. It's amazing how the weather has changed from a lovely sunny day to some wind and some overcast conditions. And that's the Western Cape for you. A change in season. How are you feeling, Igor?
A little nippy, hey?
A little nippy. So Igor was brave today. He came, he stepped out without his jacket today, and he's with a t-shirt, and now he's feeling quite cold. So Sishle is commenting that she's hoping that this weather doesn't change in a very, very bad way. But if there's a rainbow, then nothing matters. Then that's all okay. Then that's made her day. I think rainbows are stunning. Will make anyone's day. So we're seeing, is that... Oh, I've lost feed. Thank you, Jose, for that question. Our cormorants, most of them, yes, are going to nest on the rocks that you see. We had a nice focus on Cormorant Cove over there, and in little spaces, in little crevices, they will find a spot sheltered. They'll keep their chicks nice and warm. The material that they're collecting, it could be pieces of kelp that we saw earlier, that one of the kelps actually went into the water and collected a piece of kelp. It could be shells, it could be little pieces of vegetation, so such as dried out twigs, even some of the kelp that you find washed up onto the shore that's very dry. But I must say, what I find quite disappointing with our cormorants and their nests, especially the whole human-animal conflict that we have, is that we find cormorants are collecting a lot of fishing line, plastics that they pick up, and they make their nests with that. So together with their nesting material, they'll have, they use a lot of their guano that will insulate and keep their eggs warm, but it almost makes these heaps, these mounts of nests that could be about 4 meters in height, because they could use a nest that they've used previously in the last year. But it's sad to find that there's lots of bits of plastic and things in there. So there's research have shown that the birds get entangled.
There is a great proverb that has been passed down from generation to generation across the plains of Africa. Until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Join WildEarth for a special lion safari on the 10th of August, broadcast to you live in celebration of World Lion Day. Witness the pride and joy of Juma, the Nkumas, the Talamatis, and the Avoca males who come roaring to your screens to tell you their story.
Here on WildEarth, we love it when you interact with our guides while they are live. In order to do this, you must head over to wildearth.tv/questions and submit your questions, comments, and suggestions. Simple as that. And to make it even simpler, from time to time, you will see a QR code on your screen. Open your camera phone and scan this code, and it will take you straight to where you need to be. We look forward to answering your questions on this channel.
And what you'll find along the east coast of southern Africa, the fish are more colorful. So the fish tend to be more colorful on that side, and it's purely due to, what do we find in the ocean? Here in Cape Town, it's nutrient-rich waters. There's a lot of fish, and that's providing food for our kelp to grow. You'll find grazers that are here that would feed on that. Then you've got fish that would eat those guys. So the ecosystem is quite rich. And what we find is that the species, they don't need to, they've competed with each other to a point of taking out species that weren't as colorful and bright, so they dominated in the space. Versus if you go to the east coast, the food is limited there, the nutrients is limited, so there's a lot of competition as well. But now with their colors, they have a variety of shapes and sizes. There's not a lot of food, so the fish aren't dominating there, so their colors tend to be more colorful, and there's a lot more species on the coastline compared to this side. So there's a variety of species of fish there compared to our west coast. So it's quite interesting to work out how ecosystems function and how they're relying on this nutrient-rich waters, cold nutrient-rich waters, and they contribute to a lot of fish stocks on this side and a lot of fisheries along our Western Cape. So you can see the cormorant is diving a few times, and it's not as deep here. It's along the kelp reef and looking for little fish. So it would have been lovely to have seen some of our dassies on that side, but we didn't get on the boardwalk because it's quite busy with a lot of people, and that's probably due to people celebrating the day off in South Africa as it's National Women's Day. But our penguins have kept us entertained. So I must also share that some of our female scientists, you know, there's maybe I'll share one of my favorites, and possibly other marine biologists and oceanographers out there would agree with me, is one female scientist is Sylvia Earl, and she's done some incredible work. And things such as leading National Geographic exploring expeditions for NOAA. She's done some incredible deep sea walks and identified some species out there of plants and animals, and we're very, very proud of her, and she has so much to share and to talk about. She also advocates for the ocean, conservation and education and awareness. It's so important, and the amount of work that she has done is absolutely incredible. So I do look up to her, and I do want to encourage our viewers, female viewers, our little ones as well. If you're looking for a career, don't doubt yourself. Please consider something in the science field. You won't regret it. I, as a woman myself in the science field, it's so rewarding to work in this field as a marine biologist and an educator. I'm now sharing that passion with people, and that's what I really enjoy. And you know, we need advocates for the ocean, which is quite important. So we have had a lovely day. We were talking about our cormorants. The weather has changed. Weather has changed to rather windy and quite nippy now. And I hope that you all have enjoyed the show with us. And I would love to leave you with the last quote from Sylvia Earl is, with every drop of water you drink, every breath you take, you're connected to the sea. No matter where you are, where you live, somehow we're all connected to the ocean. And I hope that you all have enjoyed the show with us today. And Ego as well is behind the camera. He's been so good at capturing all of the cormorants. Busy. And we will see you all tomorrow, same time, same place. Thank you so much.
This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.